Hello and welcome back to the third rail. Over the last few years, I have slowly but surely collected at least one example of almost every coach and wagon Märklin produced in the 1980s. This puts me in a fortunate position of not having to worry about rolling stock when I acquire locomotives. Well, most of the times. There are a few models for which Märklin never produced anything matching. The only option is to look at other manufacturers, which can sometimes bring a few challenges. Today we are going to look at one of these models, a lovely ETAT 231 I have had in the collection for many years. We'll try and place it in a historical context, use the information to identify matching stock, and hopefully locate, then acquire models to assemble a train, so the locomotive finally sees some action. So if you'd like, you can stay with me for a bit as I embark on a rather tumultuous journey. Before we set off, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe and alert button before leaving today. Super thanks are also available if you feel the content deserves it. Whatever the option you choose will be much appreciated. Thanks very much in advance. Now on to our model. Isn't this locomotive pretty? This is model 3083, released by Märklin in 1977 and produced until 1988. The eagle-eyed among you will recognize that it is a Bavarian S36. After World War I, the Versailles Treaty mandated Germany hand over several thousand locomotives and tens of thousands of railway wagons and coaches to injured countries as war reparations. The word armistice is often used to identify these materials in the various countries they ended up in. So in French, for example, you'll often see mentions of locomotive armistice or voiture armistice. These are good keywords to use if you find yourself having to Google stuff like that. 16 S36s found their way to the inventory of the Administration des Chemins de Fer de l'État, the French state-owned railway administration of the time, known as ETAT in short. This administration had been established to ensure continuity of service after a wave of bankruptcies hit small private railway companies in the late 1800s. ETAT had to step in again on a few occasions in the 20th century, and by 1930 covered roughly a third of the French territory to the west and southwest of Paris. The S36s were allocated to Nantes, Saintes and La Rochelle. Upon arrival, they immediately went to work on the steep gradients in the region, still in their original configuration. Over the following years, they were progressively modified, and it is during that time that they received wind deflectors and the ETAT livery. All units were reallocated to Saintes in 1935. This is the operational state our model is aiming to represent. In 1937, the French government nationalized all private railway companies to combine their operations, along with those of ETAT, under the umbrella of a new state-owned company, the SNCF. The move became effective on January 1st, 1938. This high-level historical context should help in narrowing the search for appropriate rolling stock. Give or take a couple of years for the locomotives to undergo a refit, I think the search should be limited to rolling stock in operation between 1925 and 1937. So what was going on the network at the time? There would have been all sorts of wooden slam-door coaches in operation. It is also the time when ETAT began the rollout of modern metal coaches. I couldn't find much information about the exact type of wooden coaches in the area, but I was luckier for the metal ones, which are commonly referred to as OCEM coaches. Oh dear, another acronym. OCEM stands for Office Central d'Études de Matériel de Chemin de Fer, the Central Design Office for Railway Equipment. It was an industry body with participation from major players. ETAT became its largest shareholder. It had pushed for its creation to help standardize its operations, and a number of OCEM designs were also adopted by private railway companies in France. OCEM coaches are well documented, but if you can read French, there is a very nice site called Docrail that provides a wealth of information. It's a rivet counter's paradise with a wealth of details and close-up pictures. I've put a link at the top and in the description for your reference. Talking about rivets, this term is also used to differentiate between various series of OCEM coaches. The earliest ones are known as OCEM RA, where RA stands for rivet apparent, which would translate to visible rivets in English. A later development made use of concealed rivets and semi-welded panels. Coaches in this series are known as Voitures à panneaux lisses, or smoothed panel coaches. These were followed by fully welded coaches known as voitures soudées allégées, or welded light construction coaches. These were only ordered by the young SNCF. Now I found a few more pictures, like a couple you saw earlier. They are from CpaRama, a French-speaking site for postcard collectors. There is a forum there where many collections are shared. It's all very interesting and, of course, very useful. I've put another link in the description for your reference here too. So, and I found a few 2-3 ones with trains. And look at these OCEM coaches everywhere. And here we have a picture of a train passing Sainte Station, very appropriate. So, it looks like OCEM is really the way to go here. And it's something Märklin didn't do at the time the locomotive was released and hasn't made since. So I have no other choice than to look at the competition. When I have to buy non-Märklin items, I aim to stay in keeping with my 1980s collection theme as much as possible. So I start by looking at catalogues from the period. Lima or Jouef would be obvious brands given their market share in France at the time. Jouef had a couple of slam-door coaches, which I think might be too old for this locomotive, and a few OCEM coaches too, but they are only in SNCF liveries, and other manufacturers did similar items. No ETAT livery to be seen anywhere. So I had to look at newer issues. Over the last 5 to 10 years, REE Modèles, LS Models, and another company called R37 based in Brittany in France all released OCEM coaches in various flavors, including the ETAT livery. But given the business model adopted by the industry nowadays, getting your hands on what you need is easier said than done. Ideally, you'd have to pre-order as soon as a new product announcement is made and come to terms with extremely long lead times of up to 24 months. Given this and the very limited production runs, this type of products unfortunately only extremely rarely hits the second-hand market. But after a quick search, I was lucky enough to find some brand new items in stock in a UK model shop. This wasn't cheap. I could have bought 2 or maybe even 3 1980s Märklin locomotives for the price. Well, never mind. They are OCEM RA coaches made by REE Modèles, all in ETAT liveries. I think these were announced in 2019, but I don't know when they were delivered in the end. We have set VB267 comprising of 3 coaches, we have 2 C9 third-class coaches and a C4D third-class coach with luggage compartment, and then we have a VB268, it's another C9 third-class coach. All C9 coaches are identical, of course, but they are all individually numbered. As an REE virgin, I'm quite curious and also a bit anxious about them, so let's have a look. I'll just show you one of the C9s, because they're all the same, and a C4D. The packaging is not easy to get into, but I don't think it's a bad thing. So we'll start with the C9 first. Well, the first impression is definitely very good. It's very pretty. We've got nice and very fine lettering on the sides. Of course, we've got rivets everywhere. Now look at these bellows on the end. There are also some nice inscriptions there. The roof is highly detailed too. So is the chassis. Now there are many spots and little holes here and there on the chassis and the bodywork for a series of minuscule parts supplied in an accessories bag. I won't bother with them just yet. Now let's have a look at the C4D. Should be the same story here. Yes. Same level of detail. Yeah, that all looks very good. Roof is also nice there. Yeah, not bad at all. Very nice. Right, let's move to the layout and see how everything behaves now. There we are. Now, these coaches were designed for a 2-rail system, so they are fitted with DC axles, which are isolated. Now, these usually tend to be gauged on the wider side. That's the spacing between wheels on the axles. So I'm going to start by railing a coach and see if we're okay. Yeah, that's a good start. It seems to be rolling with no resistance. Good. Now, looking at the coach, it's quite low. So the next thing I'll need to check is if I have enough clearance on the bridge and ramp elements. That's always a tricky spot on this layout. So let's move there. And here we are. We are on a curved section of ramp elements. They are radius 1, 2, so I'll be able to check the tightest radius on the layout at the same time. And it looks like we have no problem. Nothing's rubbing anywhere, and the bogies are still on the track, and they don't lock by the looks of it. Good. Now, let's have a look at the bridge elements. Here I'll simply give the coach a push. And no problem, we're not getting stuck. Let me get it back, see how it behaves on the way. Same thing. Well, that's a promising start. The other coaches are the same dimensions, so I should be okay with them too. Okay, one more thing to check is the behavior on turnouts, so we'll move back to the bench. So there we are, close to a turnout. I'm going to push the coach over and see what happens. Looks like it's fine going straight. Yeah, in both directions. Now let me change the turnout to round, and we have a derailment. Now, that's an older type of M-track turnout. I have a few later ones in service too. Let's check one now. So we're on the other side of the layout, and it looks like the coach is behaving itself on a newer type of turnout. Okay, good to know. Now, final thing I need to check is the behavior of the couplings. So I'm going to grab another coach and move back to the ramp for the next bit. So we're on the curved section of ramp again. It looks like the couplings are doing their job in the sense that both coaches are attached to each other, but I am not sure they are very good at keeping a set distance between coaches. Now, the way I'm checking this is really not optimal, but it doesn't look good nevertheless. I might need to use other couplings. We'll see. Okay, so it looks like I'm going to need to swap my oldest turnouts for more recent ones if I want to use these coaches on my layout. This is not ideal, but it's not a bad thing either, as I have a stock of more recent ones I wanted to check in preparation for the next layout. Yes, I still intend to build it, but things keep getting in the way, unfortunately. If you haven't seen the videos about the topic, I've put a link to a playlist at the top now. So, what I'm going to do first is change a couple of turnouts so that I can run stuff on the ground level loop. One moment, please. And I have now swapped my turnouts. That was easy peasy. For the test, I'm going to swap some couplings as well. I really don't trust these ones. As we can see, we have coupling kinematics with NEM pockets, but they feel quite weak to me. So for the initial test, I'm going to use drawbars instead of the REE loop couplings for now. Okay, let me check the behavior on the new turnout. Things look okay. So it's time to have a go with the locomotive and this pair of coaches. Well, it's already looking rather nice, isn't it? So let's send the stuff on the ground loop. I haven't serviced the loco yet, so it's a bit noisy, but I'm not interested in this for now. It's the coaches I'll be looking at. And it looks like they are behaving. No problem on the turnouts. Everything's staying on the track. One more turnout. And we're back. Very good. So I'm going to try and reverse to check the ramp. We've got drawbars, so we should be okay here. Yeah, no problem. We are still on the track and we're not hitting anything. Okay, so it looks like I know what to do now. And the first thing will be to change quite a few turnouts. Oh dear. One moment, please. And we are back, but not a couple of hours later as I hoped, but a few days later instead. And my old turnouts are still in place. Before swapping any more of them, I decided to do a few more tests off camera, and I landed in what is commonly known as integration hell. This led to hours spent troubleshooting intermittent derailments, mainly on that curved area here, then on the kind of snaky area near the shed, then on the turnout at the exit of the inner station, and this one's a newer type of turnout too, and then on the curved ramp section before the first straight section on the ramp, on the other side of the layout. So I spent a lot of time trying all sorts of things to fix this. I tried 4 types of couplings, several combinations of the 2 types of NEM pockets that came with the coaches. I tried adjusting the back-to-back wheel spacing to different values between 13.8 millimeters and 14.3 millimeters. And despite some perceivable improvements with a back-to-back of roughly 14.1 millimeter, I was not able to get a 3 or 4 coach train to run reliably. But based on the outcome of these attempts, I came to the conclusion that the problem was most likely down to the type of wheels fitted to the coaches. So here's one of the axles in question. Now if we look at the wheel, we can see that the flange is minuscule. That's the bit that keeps the wheel on the track. Let me grab a Märklin axle for comparison. Here we can see the flange on a Märklin wheel is at least twice the size in proportion to the rest of the wheels, and this could explain why the coaches spend their time jumping off the rails. So after that I decided to start hunting for 3-rail axles. So I did the right thing first, which was to contact the manufacturer. REE told me they had never made 3-rail axles for these models. But they are planning to make some for a new series of coaches with similar bogies that should be available, wait for it, on or after December 2024. So I wasn't going to wait that long, so I had to broaden my search. Finding something compatible was surprisingly difficult. If we look at a bogie, we can see that the axles are held in place by what looks like brass bearings. It's these 2 metal parts on either side of the bogie. These are in fact pickups for interior lighting. They are electrically isolated from each other. That's for operation on a 2-rail system. I messed around with the axles, but I think their width was around 22.5 to 22.8 millimeters maybe, which is narrower than common standard sizes. The wheel diameter is not too uncommon, at 10.5 millimeters in side flanges, but there is not enough clearance for larger wheels in the bogies, as the brake shoes would be in the way. So Google was put to good use, but a lot of websites don't give full specifications, and I had to do a lot of cross-referencing and indirect searching. The closest match I could find were 3-rail Brava replacement axles, reference number 2188, with an axle length of 23 or 23.1 millimeter, I think, and slightly smaller diameter of wheels of 10.3 millimeters. At first, I only ordered enough for a single coach to test the fit, as these things are quite pricey at about 5 to 6 euro plus VAT a pop. Of course, I had to order these from Germany, so the shipping came on top of that. But they fit, and more importantly, the wheel flanges are taller, as we can see in this side-by-side comparison here. The Brava axle is on the right-hand side. So, I got what I needed for the remaining coaches, which meant I had to wait another week or two. And it also meant that the coaches were getting more and more expensive by the day. This means we've reached nearly Märklin Flying Scotsman territory. Anyway, so I'll swap the axles on this coach. See, it's a bit of a squeeze. But it fits, and the axle rotates freely. So, I've done this on all other coaches already. I have reverted to the original REE loop couplings everywhere for the initial testing, and I'll swap them if I need to later. I do need to do one more thing here. Due to the smaller wheel diameter, the uncoupling lever will be too close to the track and is extremely likely to get caught on point contacts, especially on turnouts. So to preempt this, I'm going to simply snip a bit off. Cool. Let me rail everything and we'll see how we get on now with these new shoes. There we are. So I'm going to send the full train, finally, around the ground loop first to see if we have made any progress and if the couplings manage the curves. Entering the turnout in the station, exiting, and exiting the station. Everything's still fine. We're on the bypass, no problem in the curve there. Okay, right, well, we're going to send the whole thing on the main line now and see what happens. So that's it, we're entering the main line. The first curve was tricky, and we're fine here. Then behind the shed, onwards, that's fine too. So far so good. Exiting the station. And we've gone through the curve with no problem. Excellent. Okay, it looks like we are finally there. I shall tidy up a bit now, so I can then sit back and enjoy the fruits of my labor. There we are. Isn't this train beautiful? Now, having spent many hours handling the coaches, what do I think about my first ever RE purchase? First of all, as you might have seen from the close-up shots, or not, depending on your skipping habits, you know you are, the coaches are gorgeous. I find the level of detail very high, and it can be improved even further by adding the parts contained in the finishing kit provided with each coach. According to the instructions, these are press-fit parts which will avoid smearing glue everywhere, which is a nice touch. The coaches have a good weight too, and the quality of the plastics and mouldings is excellent. The fine level of detail has a few drawbacks. I found that various factory-applied parts can easily become detached. A few of them fell off on the side of the track or were left behind on my bench after I handled the coaches. I only noticed this by accident as well, and I have already managed to lose a metal handlebar from the side of a door on a coach. Reattaching these fallen parts was very frustrating. They are absolutely minuscule, and the locating hole to hold them in place are even tinier. I'm over 50, as most of the target customer base is, I would assume. At that age, eyesight is a factor that manufacturers often underestimate in my view. But by far the most surprising aspects are of operational nature. First, there is the engineering of the coupling kinematics. They are modular to allow the use of different types of name pockets, which is not a bad thing, but their construction is simply not stiff enough. There is far too much play between the different elements making up the kinematic assembly. The couplings don't travel smoothly, and they do not always return to their central position. The amount of play between the kinematic arm and the NEM pocket is such that the coupling head dangles loosely. As a result, it is too close to the track bed. This type of things can easily cause derailments, and on a 3-rail system, the couplings can easily get caught on center contacts. This is not too much of a problem here going forward, but reversing or shunting is simply out of the question unless drawbars or stiff interlocking coupling heads such as Märklin short couplings are used. Secondly, we have the driving characteristics. Now, I'm fully aware that the coaches were not made for my use case, but I cannot imagine that they would behave perfectly on the average 2-rail layout out of the box. The coaches are simply too sensitive to track imperfections. The smallest uneven track joint or a variation in camber is enough for a coach to fly off the track. I think the engineering of the bogies would have needed a bit more attention, but who am I to know? I'm only an idiot user. All this is a bit disappointing given the cost, but I guess this is part of the game in this day and age. The expression style over substance comes to mind here. In a nutshell, beautiful cosmetically, but technically there is plenty of scope for improvement, and these things must be handled with the utmost care. Now, these coaches were designed a few years ago. Maybe some aspects have improved on your REE products. If you own some, feel free to share your experience in the comment section. I'd love to find out about this. But as things stand, I would strongly advise against buying something like that without first visiting a shop with a test layout, or borrowing some to try them on your own layout so you can gain some experience. That was my tuppence worth. Despite the few shortcomings, we now have an absolutely gorgeous train travelling around the layout safely. The locomotive is finally on the move after years of storage, and I am sure I will grow to appreciate my newest acquisition more and more as time goes by. Right, we've reached the end for this installment. Thank you very much for spending such a long time with me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully enough for you to give it a like, maybe subscribe if you haven't already done so, or even send a super thanks my way if you feel the video was worth it. Thanks as ever for all your support, and bye for now.